I do want to say in advance that although I've looked up the pronunciations of everyone's name, I apologize if I say anything incorrectly. Today's episode, we're going back to the year 1860, to the Kingdom of Siam, which is a smaller area of what we now know today as Thailand. This story is about Queen Sunanda Kumariratana. She entered the world as the 50th child, yes, number 50, of King Mongkut. If that name rings a bell for you, it might be because King Mongkut was the inspiration for the king in the musical The King and I. He had dozens of wives and concubines, so while 50 might sound inconceivable now, back then it was just another Tuesday in the royal palace. But Sunanda wasn't just any royal baby. Eventually, she became the wife of her half-brother, King Chulalongkorn. At the time, this was a very strategic and, frankly, normal arrangement. In many royal families, especially in Southeast Asia, marrying within the bloodline was seen as a way to preserve power, status, and what was considered total purity of the royal lineage. So let's talk about King Chulalongkorn for a moment. He wasn't just some figurehead ruler going through the motions. There was a lot of passion for his kingdom during his time as king. He's remembered as one of the most progressive monarchs Siam has ever had. He pushed for modernization, challenged old norms, and helped guide the country through a complex time of transformation. The change within his rule extended to his arranged marriage with Queen Sunanda as well. Instead of just being a public show and a means of keeping up tradition, she actually held a special place in his heart. People close to the royal family knew it. She was his first wife, and his other two wives, being her younger sisters, didn't mean as much as she did to him. She was his favorite. Their bond was deep, emotional, and it was real. By all accounts, he loved and adored his wife more than anything in the world. Not to say love doesn't ever grow with arranged marriages, but his love for her really stood out, especially in this time. Fast forwarding to 1880, Queen Sunanda is 19 years old. She's 3 years into her role as queen and pregnant with her second child. Her and the king at this point already share a 1-year-old daughter. Now, despite her youth, she was already carrying the enormous weight of royal expectation. Every move she made was watched, judged, and controlled. The queen was held to a standard that most would crumble under, but she held strong and she was a beloved leader. Everyone loved and adored the way her and the king ruled. On April 22nd, 1880, Queen Sunanda, along with her daughter and a group of royal attendants, boarded a royal boat for a journey down the Chao Phraya River. This was no quick ride or casual outing. It was official travel, very much a part of royal tradition. The queen was traveling in style, as you can imagine. These weren't little rinky-dink wooden boats. These were grand, gilded, heavily decorated vessels with golden trim and luxurious interiors. Some citizens would gather to watch the royal boat set sail because it was a beautiful sight. But on this particular day, disaster struck. While traveling, the queen's boat collided with another vessel. And here's a crazy twist. It wasn't just any boat. It was another royal ship. This wasn't a case of a random attack or someone setting sail with no knowledge. This was a fatal, accidental crash between two parts of the same royal operation. The collision caused massive damage to her boat. Her boat was compromised, and then a fire started and the entire thing began to sink. During the chaos, Queen Sunanda attempted to save herself and her 1-year-old baby, trying to escape the flames by jumping into the water. But that's where the heartbreak really hits. The queen couldn't swim. She'd never been taught, and honestly, why would she? Because back then, royals weren't expected to know how to survive in the way that commoners were. That skill wasn't necessary for her because in a situation like this, someone would have been there to save her. Her status automatically protected her from danger, but it also left her unprepared for it. She was pregnant, terrified, and completely vulnerable. As she struggled in the water, along with her 1-year-old, pretty much everyone around her just watched, which of course is confusing. If she was so loved, why wouldn't everyone rush to save her? What about at least saving the baby? It's because they were legally forbidden to touch her. And I'll expand on that a little. By law, no one, not a crew member, not a bystander, no one was allowed to lay hands on the queen. It was a law punishable by death. And it sounds a little outrageous, right? But this was part of a deeply embedded system in ancient Thai culture. Royals weren't just leaders in the way that they are today. They were considered divine, godlike. Back then, even looking at them directly was often forbidden, let alone touching them. Even accidental contact could result in immediate punishment. So there she was, drowning before their eyes, and no one intervened. Some tried to help without breaking the law. They threw debris that would float, hoping she could be able to hold on to it and save herself, maybe save her baby. They shouted. Some bystanders even cried hysterically, but no one was able to save her. No one dared to touch her. They cried, but no one reached in, not even as she began to slip under the surface. When you read about this, you can't really blame them. When you think about the bystander effect, that still happens today, even without the threat of death. The fact that people will stand around and watch a tragedy unfold, thinking, well, someone else will do it. Someone else will help them, to the point where that person never gets helped at all. That phenomenon is a great example of how a crowd of people can be useless. After just a few minutes of no one being able to do anything to help her, Queen Sunanda, her baby girl, and her unborn child were gone. They were the only ones who died that day. The king was devastated. This wasn't just a national tragedy. This was deeply, horribly personal for him. He lost his wife, his daughter, and the child that they were so excited to meet. And worst of all, he knew it could have been prevented. King Chulalongkorn didn't let the tragedy fade until everyone forgot about it. He took that pain and he channeled it into reform. He started to reshape the monarchy from the inside out. Laws were questioned, customs were overturned, and the idea that royals were untouchable, literally and figuratively, was dismantled almost immediately. Their deaths actually marked the end of an absolute monarchy within that family, and the political structure of ancient Thailand was never the same. He enacted standards that limited royal power, and in his grief, he made sure that Queen Sunanda would never be forgotten. The queen and princess were given such a grand funeral that it took nearly a year for preparations to finish. The funeral pyre was reported to be 280 feet tall, and celebrations lasted at least 10 days. But even now, the full truth of what happened that day is up for debate. Most historical records say that no one helped her because of the law, but some accounts, including entries from the king's own diary, suggest that something else happened. According to him, boatmen did jump in. They pulled the queen and her daughter from the water, carried them to another boat and attempted resuscitation, but by then it was too late. So what really happened? Were they simply too delayed to make a difference? Did fear stop them from acting before it was too late? Or did no one notice that they were drowning in time? If people really did try to save her, why did no one else die? She wasn't alone. The boat had an entire crew. There were attendants, security, and a lot of other people present that day. It was also well known that she couldn't swim, so you would think that at least security would have had an emergency plan in place, but still, only she and her daughter drowned. It's well documented and proven that ancient Thai civilizations, especially in a region like Siam, did indeed have laws punishable by death regarding touching and sometimes looking at their royal families. But then the king's diary calls into question what actually happened, regardless of the laws. It doesn't quite make sense because he dismantled that law altogether. Directly after their death, he took apart the law stating that commoners could not touch royals under any circumstances. And why would he do that if they did in fact attempt to save his wife and child? Of course, we'll never know definitively if this was an act of malicious compliance by commoners. Maybe the rule didn't extend to an already dead royal, so they pulled her and her daughter out when she was already unconscious. and didn't have to face the consequences. Or maybe they could have been spared in this circumstance if they'd saved the queen's life, but everyone chose to stand around and watch instead. I'm so fascinated by this one, and of course, it's nearly impossible to find enough information to come to a real conclusion. To me, it seems like she died in a completely preventable way. There were way too many people present, especially members of her own royal fleet. It's fishy to me that only her and her daughter died, and strict laws aside, surely someone who loved their queen would have risked it all anyway. We know how, back in the day, a lot of people would have died for their rulers. Same can't be said for today, but back then, I imagine someone would have tried. Either way, this story is incredibly sad. Thinking about how not only did the queen die as a teenager and her unborn baby along with her, but how her 1-year-old had to have been so confused and terrified too. It's truly gut-wrenching, and I wish we had more information on how the whole thing went down. All the mystery and different accounts make it super frustrating to understand. That's the thing with older stories, especially the lesser known and bizarre ones. Firsthand accounts barely exist, and the historians doing the research have their own opinions, which sometimes can cloud the facts. Anyway, thanks for sticking around on this one.